Okay, here's a question for you. Which one of these is true? German chocolate cakes come from Germany or French fries come from France? All right, think about that. And I'll see you on the other side of this musical soundbite on today's gastronomic episode of Life's Potluck Buffet. I'm John Paulus. Thanks for joining me. If you've been enjoying Life's Potluck Buffet, please subscribe. And if you've already subscribed, thank you so much. I truly appreciate it. If you have a Brave browser, you can now contribute basic attention tokens to Life's Potluck Buffet with John Paulus on YouTube. Thank you for your support, and thank you for listening. All right. You've had some time to think about it. So, well, let me tell the story. One of these is a misunderstood name. The other one is actually kind of accurate, even though it is doubted by many people. And there's a whole urban legend story about one of these that leads people to think that the name has nothing to do with the reality of the situation, but it really does. So let's get to the bottom of our culinary conundrum. Why don't I start with a story in Massachusetts in the 19th century, where an Irish chocolate maker brought his knowledge of chocolate making to this side of the pond, and that piqued the interest of a doctor called Dr. Baker. And this name is not going to be an aptronym. Remember what an aptronym is, where you have a name that's the same as what your occupation is? So if this person's name were something like Dr. Surgeon or Dr. Stethoscope. Anyway, you get the point. So when a Mr. Baker is a baker, then we call that an aptronym. And this kind of thinking comes from a long pop psychology tradition. And I think it's fun. I try to see how many acronyms I could see. Although, like that episode where I was talking about, if you look for something, you'll find it. Nothing is more true than if you look for acronyms, you are going to find them everywhere. So back to Dr. Baker. I'm going to call this a quasi-aptronym because the product that Dr. Baker's future company would produce is for bakers. And the company would be named after his family name, Baker. And that company is Baker's Chocolates. So when you see the brand Baker's Chocolates, it's not because it's for bakers. Was by bakers, people named Baker. And it is only shall I call it a quasi-aptronym, semi-aptronym, because that chocolate is actually used by bakers. That's what it was for. And one particular type of baker's chocolate, I mean, not chocolate for bakers, but baker's brand chocolate, is involved in one of our food names today that is under consideration. Well, another person from across the pond, from the perspective of Massachusetts, where Baker's Chocolates started 244 years ago, and they're still around. You can, in the U.S., you can still buy Baker's Chocolate, which is baking chocolate. So I'm really going to say that this is one of these kind of future-looking acronyms that where the person would do something that would result in a product that would have to do with their last name. So that's got to be a new category of acronym. I'm going to call it a futuronym, like in the future this will be an acronym. Okay, well, the second person who came across the pond, by the way, that guy John Hannon, who was the Irish chocolatier, went missing. We don't know why. And that kind of is a lost thread of the story. But there's someone else who came from across the pond named Samuel German. Hey, you see where this is going. Samuel German had come up with a technique to have sugar in the chocolate that didn't crystallize and cause issues. So he had a way to introduce sugar into the chocolate in a way that would make it very smooth and usable for baking purposes. You see, before there was only for the baking market the blocks of bitter chocolate, bars of bitter chocolate that didn't have sugar in them. And so there was a need for what would be called sweet chocolate and would be called Baker's German's sweet chocolate after the person who came up with the recipe for it and who Baker's descendant, who was the head of the baking chocolate company, named for Samuel German. So now you see, a German chocolate cake was not named after any German person. It was named after a person from England named Samuel German, who lived in the United States and worked as a chocolate maker. And in the 1950s, in the Dallas Morning Sun's cooking column written by Julie Bennell, Bennell attributes to a Mrs. George Clay a recipe for German's chocolate cake. And that uses Baker's German's sweet chocolate and has a frosting made of coconut, shredded coconut, and pecans. And that is where we get the name for the cake that is called in the United States and elsewhere German chocolate cake. Germans make chocolate cake too, but German chocolate cake, as it's called, should really be called Baker's Samuel German's sweet chocolate cake. But whatever the case may be, German chocolate cake has nothing to do with the country Germany or anybody of German descent, unless somehow Samuel German's ancestors were called German because they came from somewhere in Germany to England at some point, in which case there may be some connection, but it's only a very loose connection at best. Nonetheless, German chocolate cake, not from Germany, from Texas. And it's not even from there's a Texas German community that's actually a German language that's spoken in German communities in Texas is Texas German. So there actually are certainly Germans and have been Germans a long time. Texas, they didn't seemingly create this recipe at all, unless George Clay's name is hiding a additional layer of this story, and Mrs. George Clay was actually of Texas German ancestry, which would add a really another layer. Oh, this is a cake bun, another layer to the story. All right, so German chocolate cake, nothing to do with Germany. French fries. What do you think about French fries? You may be thinking right now, well, John, I heard that French fries are actually from Belgium. Have you heard that story? Well, that's the story that I'm here to tell you is a bit of an urban legend. Now, the people in Belgium make fries and have many wonderful dipping sauces for fries and do wonderful fries that I made out of potatoes. I have enjoyed many fries in Belgium with the many wonderful various dipping sauces available for fries in Belgium. And that is without a doubt a real area of strength in Belgium. I'm thinking of specifically French-speaking parts of Belgium that I'm thinking of right now. So not surprised that this story emerged that in World War I, somehow American troops who were, hearing French being spoken and not realizing that the people that they were who they were seeing make these fries were Belgian, mistakenly, erroneously called them French fries. Now we have in the 19th century we have recipes for French fried potatoes, and in fact we even have evidence going further back that to letters of Thomas Jefferson, the one of the presidents of the United States, and writings of Jefferson that has a recipe that has recipes for French style fried potatoes. And it seems like one of the French chefs that cooked for Jefferson was the source of this particular recipe. And so here we're seeing that there is a strong French strain of thought here. And the pommes de terre frites were very popular, as we know from texts of the 18th century, of the 1800s rather, in Paris, and that you normally could get on the streets of Paris a brown paper bag of chestnuts that were roasted, and a cornet, so a cone, a paper cone that was used from, like, it kind of used excess paper in the same way that maybe fish and chips are served in newspaper in the UK. The cone of French fries, and we have lots of evidence for this in recipes of the 19th century, where they talk about using, cutting the fries into strips, which is a change because that strips, like the French fries appear today mostly, that replaced like coin-shaped fried potatoes. In earlier cookbooks, the fried potatoes were coin-shaped. And another thing that changed was what you put on them. In the French version, the pommes de terre frites of the 19th century, it was the familiar salt that we're used to. In areas before that, so there's a cookbook written by a Scottish lady in the 17th century that talks about how to fry potatoes, and that cookbook suggests you should put sack and sugar on them when you're done. So they're cut into like coin shaped pieces. They're fried, and then they're covered in sack and sugar. And so sack is a dry sack sherry, which was often flavored with sugar. And interestingly, medical professionals have written about this because they think that the great rise of gout, which is a kind of reactive arthritis that affects in half of the people who have it, affects the big toe, and a lot of pain and burning and so forth in the big toe. That the gout rates rose kind of dramatically starting in the 17th century, and there are these medical authors who think that the reason was the introduction of a lot of sugar and refined sugar specifically into the diet of of people in the United Kingdom particularly, and so, like, I could see in these recipes where you're flavoring basically French fries with sugar and sherry mixture, you could see how when you start eating a lot of this stuff, the amount of sugar that you have in your diet causes these uric acid problems that are ultimately the reason for the symptoms of gout. So that is the story of German chocolate cake, not German, French fries, French. We also have pantomimes where the characters walk in with a cone of fries from the 1800s, and do their thing. And these are French pantomimes. So, of course, so there's a lot of evidence that the streets of Paris were a place where you get fries back in the day. So calling them French fries is pretty accurate. All right, so let's ask the cards for some accurate information about our working lives. Yellow lemons, blue dumplings, magenta noodles, cards. Tell us something. She said brown fries, golden brown fries. All right. Here we go. It's card 40. Try to see yourself with others' eyes. Oh, that rhymed with fries. Think of your own story as a history based solely on others' grateful words about your work and your interactions with them. What good things are you now saying about yourself? Consider the specific words that people said about you, the actions that you did that caused that gratitude. Now try saying them out loud and see how that feels. And I'll see you tomorrow on Life's Potluck Buffet.